It's hard to admit, but I've been stuck in this cycle for years. I'm 32 now, with a decent job in software development. I make a good salary, enough to live comfortably, maybe even splurge a little, but most of what I earn goes straight into my parents' pockets, over 10 grand a year, sometimes more. Mortgages, utilities, groceries, you name it. Every year it's the same damn thing. It's like a never-ending string of .0 calls. And I always say yes. I've been doing this for as long as I can remember, since high school, maybe even before that. See, growing up, I was the responsible one, the quiet one, the invisible one. Jason, my younger brother, was always the golden child, the one who got the praise, the attention, and the free pass. He could do no wrong. Meanwhile, I was stuck being the one who cleaned up the messes, who had to keep everything running behind the scenes. I guess I never minded at first. It felt like the right thing to do, especially when mom and dad couldn't get their act together. But it's been a long time now, and something inside me's been snapping a little more each year. My brother Jason, on the other hand, has had 3 failed businesses? I can't even keep track anymore. But does he ever get blamed for any of it? Of course not. They'll talk about how hard he's trying, how his latest tech startup could be the next big thing. They treat him like some kind of genius, like he's the one carrying the family. And me, I'm the guy in the background, doing the grunt work, paying the bills, making sure they don't lose the house. I don't even get a thank you. Every time Jason starts a new project, I get that sick feeling in my stomach, the one where I know I'm going to be stuck picking up the pieces if it falls apart, but no one will acknowledge that. They just keep telling me how lucky I am to have a steady job, as if that's enough. The longer I've been in this, the worse it's gotten. Lately, I've been covering more and more for my parents. I'm not just paying their mortgage anymore. Utilities, car payments, groceries, add it all up, and I'm sinking about $200 a month into their bills. Every month. And the worst part is, I'm just expected to do it. No thanks, no acknowledgement. I can almost hear the sighs of relief when the money hits their accounts. Like it's automatic. Like they don't even have to think about it. Meanwhile, Jason's out there. At least he says he's out there. Starting another business. A tech startup this time. I don't know, maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. But that's not the point. The point is, every time he talks about it, mom and dad act like he's some kind of genius. Oh, Brian, you should see what Jason's working on. It's really going to take off this time. They all but gloss over the fact that it's the 3rd or 4th idea he's had in the last 5 years. They act like he's the only one trying to make something of himself, while I'm over here silently keeping everything afloat. It eats at me. Every time I finish a long day of coding or meetings or whatever, and I still find myself at home, paying bills, taking care of stuff no one else seems to notice. I can't remember the last time they actually asked me how my day went. But ask about Jason's startup? Oh, that's the highlight of dinner conversation. My best friend Matt has been telling me for months that I'm being used. Dude, they're taking advantage of you, he said one night when we were grabbing drinks. You're the bank, you're the ATM. At the time, I laughed it off. It's not like that, I said. They need me. But the truth is, the more I hear Matt's voice in my head, the more I start to wonder. Maybe he's right. Maybe I am just the fallback. The one they don't really need to thank because I'll always come through. Matt's not wrong, though. And the more I think about it, the more it feels like I'm drowning. Every dollar I put in their pocket is another nail in my own coffin. I'm working these long hours, trying to build my career, keep my job secure, all while making sure their life doesn't fall apart. And for what? So they can keep acting like I'm just supposed to do it? Like they can rely on me to fix everything and then pretend I'm not even there? I keep telling myself it's all for family. It's my responsibility. That's the script I've been repeating for years until I've started to believe it. But the cracks are showing now. It's hard to keep pretending I'm okay when I can barely look at myself in the mirror anymore. Jason doesn't see it. He can't. And I don't know if he even cares to. When we talk, he's always bragging about his latest idea, about how this time he's going to make it big. This one's going to be the one, Bree, he says, and I almost want to laugh in his face. He doesn't know how hard I'm working just to keep the lights on, just so he can talk about his dreams while I'm drowning in reality. I don't want to hate him. I want to support him. But at some point, it stops being about family. It starts being about me, about the fact that I'm losing myself, giving up everything I've worked for, all because they don't want to take responsibility. And when Matt calls it out, I don't know how to respond. I defend them. I always defend them. But I'm starting to wonder if it's really worth defending anymore. And that's the part that hurts the most. I know what they'll say if I finally speak up. If I tell them I can't do it anymore, they'll accuse me of being selfish. They'll probably say I don't understand family, that I'm not loyal. I've heard it all before. But the truth is, I don't know how much longer I can keep pretending this isn't killing me. It was my mom who called a few days before Thanksgiving, and for once, I didn't expect the usual. She surprised me with, "We were thinking you could host Thanksgiving this year." I couldn't believe it. Of all people, why me? They knew how much I'd been doing for them, how much I was already carrying. But for some reason, this felt different. Maybe they actually wanted to give me a chance to feel appreciated, or maybe it was because, despite everything, I still said yes. It felt like they were finally acknowledging the work I put in, maybe even seeing me, just a little. I agreed. I told myself it could be different this year. I could make it different. Maybe if I went all out, made everything perfect, it would finally be a Thanksgiving where I wasn't invisible. I could almost picture it, Mom and Dad sitting at the table, Jason too, everyone complimenting my cooking, my planning. A nice, quiet dinner where we didn't have to pretend anymore, where they finally saw me. I held on to that thought as I went shopping with Matt. We spent hundreds of dollars: turkey, stuffing, wine, mashed potatoes, green beans, rolls, everything you can think of. I even splurged on a fancy bottle of wine. I felt like if I went big enough, it would force them to notice how much effort I put in. Maybe then they'd appreciate me the way they did Jason's every little project. Maybe this time they'd see me. But the whole time I was shopping, the knot in my stomach wouldn't go away. I kept thinking about the past Thanksgivings, how I'd always been the one in the kitchen, cleaning up, keeping things running while Jason would show up late, or not at all, and Mom and Dad would just gush over him. But I tried to push that out of my mind. This time was going to be different. I called Jason on my way back from the store, feeling a little lighter, hoping for a change. "Hey, are you bringing anything for dinner?" I asked, trying to sound casual. Jason was on the other end, probably doing something else, but I could hear the distraction in his voice. "Nah, I'll just bring myself." I blinked at the phone. "Really? I thought you might bring something, to contribute." He paused for a second, then shrugged, and I could practically hear the eye roll through the phone. "I'm just gonna show up, man. It's fine." Just like that, the knot tightened again. Of course. No surprise there. Jason never had to worry about what he brought to the table, literally or figuratively. It's always been someone else's job to take care of things. And when he shows up, he gets all the credit. "Okay, whatever," I said, trying to keep my voice even. "I'll see you there." I hung up, frustrated, but I shoved it down. I had already committed to making this Thanksgiving perfect. So, I was going to make it perfect. I wasn't going to let Jason's lack of effort ruin it, but as I went through the motions of preparing, of setting the table, putting together the spread, it felt like I was carrying the weight of the whole damn thing. Again. Same story, same cycle. I could already see how it would play out. Jason would show up late, looking like he just rolled out of bed, and Mom and Dad would act like he was the star of the show. They'd ignore me, ignore the work I did to make everything come together. And I'd be left in the background, just like always. Still, I kept pushing. I thought, maybe just maybe, this year would be different. Maybe if I worked hard enough, I'd finally get the recognition I deserved. The day before Thanksgiving, I spent hours in my kitchen, chopping vegetables, prepping the turkey, making sure everything was perfect. I set the table, folded napkins into little shapes like I'd seen in fancy restaurants, put out candles and decorations, stuff I never had to do. But I did it anyway because I wanted this Thanksgiving to be different. I wanted them to see the effort. I wanted to feel like I mattered for once. Then the phone rang. It was my mom. "Oh, Brian, by the way," she said, almost casually. "We were thinking it would be better if we just had Thanksgiving at our house this year. You don't mind, do you?" I froze. My stomach dropped, and all I could think was, of course this was happening. It wasn't enough that I'd been slaving away to make everything perfect at my place. Now, I had to haul all this food across town, all the while pretending like it wasn't the last thing I wanted to do. But I couldn't say no. Not again. "Yeah, sure," I said, biting my lip. "No problem." I could feel my frustration building, but I tried to keep it cool. I'd already committed to making this Thanksgiving something different, and I wasn't about to lose it over something so trivial, so I thought. The next morning, I loaded up the car with everything: turkey, mashed potatoes, wine, all the fixings, and drove over to my parents' place. My hands gripped the steering wheel a little tighter than usual, but I still held on to that hope, that maybe this time things would go as I'd imagined. I walked in the door, my arms full of bags and trays, but the first thing I noticed was the lack of warmth. No, "Hey Brian, thanks for doing all this." Nothing. Just the sound of voices in the kitchen, and then, before I could even take my coat off, my dad looked up and gave me the briefest glance. "What'd you get that new car for?" he asked, his tone sharp, as if I'd somehow betrayed him by upgrading from my old sedan to something a little nicer. "Look at you, fancy now." It was like a slap to the face. I was carrying Thanksgiving on my back, had been for years, and he was worried about my car. I bit my tongue, setting the food down on the counter. "It's just a car, Dad," I muttered. I was already tired, the weight of the past year pressing down on me. Jason was there, of course. He was already in the living room, talking to Mom and Dad, and they were all laughing like the world was fine. I set the food down and took a deep breath. As I walked into the living room, Jason barely acknowledged me. He didn't even stand up when I entered the room. "Oh, you made it," he said, barely looking up from his phone. "Yeah, I brought everything," I said, trying to sound casual, but it came out flat. Mom smiled and immediately turned her attention to him. "Jason's been working so hard on his new business idea," she said, like that was somehow an excuse for everything he didn't do. She was proud of him, just like always. And there it was. Jason got all the praise, while I was invisible again. He didn't bring a thing, not a bottle of wine, not a side dish. He didn't even offer to help with the setup. But it was like he was the star of the show. "You should really see the presentation he's been working on," she added, eyes wide with admiration. I tried to keep my mouth shut, tried to just breathe, to keep the anger from bubbling over. But it was hard. It always felt like Jason was the one who got everything, the attention, the approval, and me. I was just the guy in the background, making sure the bills were paid, making sure Thanksgiving even happened. Dad barely glanced at me again, instead pointing at Jason. "That's the thing, kid. Jason's got vision. You can't put a price on that." I knew it was coming, but it still stung. They were acting like he was the one making the big contribution, like he was the one who'd done all the hard work. And I was left standing there, empty-handed, with nothing to show for my years of sacrifice. I stood there for a second, wondering if I was going to snap, wondering if it was finally time to say something, but the words felt stuck in my throat. I looked at the food I'd spent hours preparing, at the table I'd set with such care, and all I felt was that familiar ache in my chest, the ache of being invisible. No one noticed the work I'd done. No one acknowledged the sacrifices I'd made. Jason didn't even have the decency to pretend he cared. I forced a smile and looked around the room. "Well, hope everyone's hungry," I said, trying to keep it light. But I knew it wouldn't be enough. It never was. The conversation drifted back to Jason's latest idea, and that's when I finally snapped. "Seriously, Jason?" I couldn't help myself. "It's always the same thing with you. New business idea, new vision, and it never goes anywhere." Jason didn't even flinch. He just kept talking, all excited, explaining his latest project like it was the next big thing. The man had no shame. He didn't have a product, didn't have a plan, and still, here he was, talking about it like he was the next Steve Jobs. "Yeah, it's going to change everything," he said, like he really believed it. "I've been working on the pitch, and I think this time it'll hit. The market's ripe for this, Brian. You don't get it yet, but you will." I felt my jaw tighten, my hands balling into fists. My dad leaned forward, nodding like Jason was the prodigy he had always hoped for. "That's the thing, Jason," Dad said. "You've got vision. That's what this family needs, someone with real vision." The words hit me like a punch. I wanted to scream, to throw something. Vision? I had just landed a major project at work, something I'd been busting my ass for months to get, and not a word. No congratulations, no I'm proud of you. Nothing. I worked harder than I ever had in my life, and it didn't matter. Jason's half-baked dream got all the praise, while I was invisible as usual. I couldn't hold it in anymore. "You know what, Dad?" I said, my voice rising. "I've been paying your bills for years, over $14,000 a year. You think I'm just complaining about my vision? The words were out before I could stop them, but once I said them, I couldn't take them back. The air in the room felt thick, heavy, like something was about to break. You think I don't understand family loyalty? I've been keeping you afloat for years while Jason keeps failing, and you keep pretending like he's the one doing all the work. I looked at Jason, my brother who was sitting there, like he hadn't heard a word, like he didn't even care that I'd been doing everything for this family, and he just kept mouthing off about his vision. Dad shook his head, dismissing me with a wave. You don't get it, Brian. You're just bitter. You're jealous of Jason's dreams because you don't have any of your own. The sting of those words hit harder than anything he'd ever said to me. I opened my mouth to argue, but Jason spoke up, like he was the one in charge of everything. Come on, man, he said, the words laced with that same smug tone I was so used to. You're just pissed because I'm making something of myself and you're stuck in that boring job of yours. Just admit it. You're jealous of my drive. I felt my blood boiling. Jealous? Of him? The guy who'd coasted through life, who couldn't hold on to a single idea long enough to make it work. He was the one being praised, while I was the one busting my ass day in and day out, never getting a word of thanks, never getting acknowledged. I looked at my parents, at Jason, and felt like the room was closing in. They didn't care, they didn't see me. Not for the work I did, not for the sacrifices I'd made. They couldn't even be bothered to notice. I was just the guy who paid the bills, who kept the family from falling apart, who was always invisible. I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't sit there pretending I didn't feel like a damn fool. Without another word, I stood up. The chair scraped loudly against the floor, and all their eyes turned to me. But I didn't care. I'm done, I said, voice shaking with frustration, with years of built-up resentment. I'm not doing this anymore. Jason's eyes narrowed, and Mom's face fell, but I didn't care. I didn't wait for them to say anything else. I turned and walked out of that room, out of that house, leaving the food, the table, the empty praise behind. I didn't even make it to the door before I heard Dad's voice calling after me. Don't you walk out on your family, Brian. But I didn't stop. I couldn't. I was done. I drove home in a daze, the streets blurring in front of me. My hands were still shaking, my chest tight. I felt humiliated, drained, like I'd just given everything I had and gotten nothing in return but anger and disappointment. The worst part was, I didn't even feel any better for walking out. In fact, it felt worse. Like I'd done something wrong. Maybe I had. But then again, maybe I hadn't. I barely made it inside before my phone started buzzing like crazy. My mom, then my dad, then my mom again. The messages started piling up, their words all over the place. First apologizing, then demanding explanations, then circling back to blame. They kept saying they were sorry, but it didn't feel like an apology. It felt like an attempt to control me, to make me feel guilty for leaving. One message from Dad stuck out. You've ruined everything, Brian. You've torn this family apart. If you don't come back and fix what you've done, we'll have no choice but to take legal action for financial abuse. The words hit me like a brick. Legal action? For financial abuse? I had been the one covering their bills for years, but suddenly, I was the bad guy. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. All I wanted was for them to see me, just once, for all the shit I'd done for them. But I was the villain. I was the one who'd ruined everything. I didn't respond. I couldn't. I turned my phone off and tossed it on the kitchen counter, walking away before I could get sucked into the chaos again. I needed space, a way to clear my head. So, I grabbed my keys and went for a drive. I don't even remember where I went, just that the road stretched on in front of me like an endless line, and I was somewhere in the middle of it, trying to breathe. I could still feel the tension from earlier, still taste the bitterness of my family's indifference. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Jason's smug face, heard my dad's dismissive tone, felt the weight of years of sacrifice with no recognition. That's when Matt's name flashed across my screen. I didn't even want to talk to anyone, but I picked up anyway. You okay? He asked, and I could tell he already knew what had happened. No, I said, my voice breaking before I could stop it. I don't even know what's wrong with me. I just snapped, man. I can't do this anymore. I can't keep giving everything and getting nothing in return. Matt was quiet for a moment, but then he said something that made my gut twist. You've been enabling them, Brian. You've been letting them treat you like this for years, and it's on you to stop. It's not your job to fix their lives. You're drowning, man, and they're just dragging you down with them." His words landed like a punch to the stomach. I had always known deep down that I was enabling them, but hearing it out loud made it real. I wasn't just helping. I was letting them walk all over me, letting them use me, all while pretending to be the responsible one. "I don't know what to do," I admitted. "I feel like I've lost everything." "You haven't lost everything," Matt said, his voice steady. "You're not the one losing, Brian. They are. You've been keeping them afloat for too long. You've got to set some boundaries. You have to take control of your life, man. Or you're just going to keep sinking." That hit me hard. The thought of setting boundaries felt foreign, like a weight I couldn't carry, but Matt was right. I had to start putting myself first. I had to stop being the one who saved everyone else while no one saved me. That night, after I hung up with Matt, I did something I'd never thought I'd have the guts to do. I logged into all the accounts, mortgages, utilities, car payments, and started canceling everything. I set up new passwords, locked them out of all the services. It felt like cutting a piece of myself off, but at the same time, it felt like a weight lifting off my chest. Each bill I canceled, each account I shut down, was a step toward taking back control of my life. I knew my family would flip out when they realized what I'd done. They'd probably beg, maybe even guilt-trip me into coming back. But for the first time in years, I didn't feel like the one who was wrong. I felt empowered. Matt had been right. I couldn't keep giving everything to people who didn't appreciate it. I couldn't keep letting them use me as their safety net while they got to do whatever they wanted. This was my life, and I was taking it back. I didn't waste any time. As soon as I'd made the decision, I knew I couldn't go back. I wasn't going to keep dragging myself through the mud just to make everyone else's lives easier while mine fell apart. I sat down that night, took a deep breath, and started with the mortgage. I logged into the account, feeling like I was standing on the edge of a cliff. My finger hovered over the cancel payment button. It wasn't a small thing, but the second I pressed it, something in me broke free. The relief washed over me, like I'd been holding my breath for years and had finally exhaled. Next, I hit the utilities. Electricity, water, internet, all of it, gone. With every click, I could feel the weight of my past sacrifices evaporating, the pressure lifting off my chest. I changed the passwords on every account they had access to. Phones, car payments, everything. It was a clean break, nothing left. I knew what was coming. I knew how my family would react when they found out. It was only a matter of time before they started calling, texting, demanding answers. They'd scream at me, guilt-trip me, maybe even threaten me. But I was done. I was done making excuses for them, done pretending like I could keep this up. This was it. After everything was canceled, I sat there for a moment, staring at the screen. My hands were shaking, but it wasn't from fear. It was from something else, something I couldn't quite name yet, but it felt like freedom. The thought of my parents and Jason flipping out, their world crumbling because I wasn't there to pay for everything anymore, should have made me nervous. But instead, it felt like I was taking my life back. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was finally starting to live. I had a few more days of vacation saved up at work, so I took them. No one at the office was expecting me to take time off, but I didn't care. I needed space to breathe, space to think. So I booked a cabin in the woods, away from everything. No phone calls, no texts, no family drama. Just me and a few quiet days to figure out what came next. The first morning I was there, I woke up early, made coffee, and just sat by the window, watching the fog lift off the ground like it was a sign. I couldn't tell you how long I just sat there, lost in thought. It felt like I was finally seeing everything for what it was, like the fog had lifted from my mind too. My phone buzzed, pulling me out of my thoughts. It was a message from Mom. "Why did you do this, Brian? We need you. Why are you abandoning us?" I stared at the words for a long time. I could almost hear her voice in my head, pleading with me, but I didn't answer. Not then. I wasn't ready to have that conversation, not when I was still trying to figure out who I was without the weight of them on my shoulders. Another message came through, this time from Dad. "You've broken your mother's heart. This is what happens when you don't support your family. You'll regret this." I put the phone down. The urge to respond, to explain myself, to apologize, was there, but I didn't. Not anymore. I knew what I needed to do, and if they couldn't see it, if they couldn't understand why I had to take a step back, then that was on them, not me. I spent the next few days hiking, reading, thinking. I didn't know where I was going from here, but I knew something had to change. I was done being the one who picked up the pieces, done being the invisible son, the guy who was always there when everyone else messed up. When I finally checked my phone again, there were dozens of messages. My parents had called. No surprise there. They were starting to panic. Jason was texting too. "What the hell, Brian? You need to fix this. I'm getting calls from Mom. We're in trouble. Don't you care about the family?" I read the messages, then deleted them. The truth was, I didn't feel sorry. Not anymore. I felt like I was finally in control of my life, and it was terrifying, but in a good way. I didn't know how long it would take for them to figure out what had happened, for them to realize that I wasn't coming back. But I did know this. Whatever came next, I was going to face it on my own terms. I wasn't their safety net anymore, and I wasn't going to be anyone else's backup plan. I wasn't sure what kind of life I was going to build, but for the first time, I was ready to find out. The morning after I canceled everything, I woke up to a barrage of notifications on my phone. Texts, calls, voicemails, one after the other, each one more desperate and frantic than the last. It was Mom first. "Brian, please, what have you done? We're ruined without your help. Your father is sick, and you're doing this to us? How could you be so heartless?" The words hit me like a slap, but I didn't respond. I couldn't. Next, Dad. "This is unforgivable, Brian. Your mother can't handle this stress. If something happens to me, it'll be on you. We need that support." The emotional manipulation was thick in his voice, like he was trying to guilt me into coming back with the threat of his health, like that was the thing that would make me cave. I stared at the screen, feeling the weight of their words pressing down on me. I didn't want to be the bad guy. I didn't want to be the one they turned on, but I wasn't going to go back. I wasn't going to let them pull me back into the same mess. Jason's text came next. "What the hell, Brian?" It read, all caps, full of rage. "You're destroying everything. Mom and Dad are freaking out. You've taken away their entire safety net. I'm getting calls from them, from everyone. You've really screwed us over, man." I didn't even feel angry reading it, just tired, exhausted. It was the same thing over and over with him. He didn't understand, didn't care to understand. It was always about him and his plans, and I was just supposed to pick up the pieces. Not anymore. Then came the voicemail from Mom. It was soft, pleading. "Brian, please, please don't do this. You're letting us down. You've been our rock for so long, and now you're just leaving. We can't do this without you. Please come home. We need you." I listened to it twice, trying to hear something other than guilt. But it was all guilt. She wasn't asking for me. She was asking for what I provided. She was asking me to come back so she didn't have to face the consequences of the choices she and Dad had made. Dad's text followed quickly after. "I'm contacting a lawyer, Brian. You can't just stop paying bills like that. There are laws about this. You'll regret doing this. Don't think you can just walk away from your family like this." The legal threat felt like a final jab, and yet, somehow, it only reinforced what I already knew. This wasn't about me. This wasn't about family. This was about control. And if they thought they could scare me into giving in, they were wrong. I sat there in the cabin, staring at my phone, knowing they were spiraling, that feeling in my stomach, the one that used to make me cave, the one that used to make me feel like I had no choice but to come back and fix everything for them, wasn't there. It wasn't like the times before when I'd buckle under the pressure. This time, I felt a strange kind of peace. I knew I wasn't the one ruining everything. They had done that themselves. I was just the guy who'd been carrying their weight for too long, and now I was finally letting go. I didn't respond to the texts. I didn't listen to the voicemail again. I just put the phone down and took a breath. The urge to go back, to fall into that familiar cycle, was still there, but it was quieter than it had ever been. And every minute I spent in that quiet, away from their demands, was another minute of freedom. I stayed firm. I wasn't going back. And as the day wore on, I realized something. For the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of what came next. I wasn't afraid of losing their approval. I wasn't afraid of being the villain in their story. Because, finally, I was starting to write my own. The calls and texts continued all day, but I ignored them. I knew they would freak out, but it didn't matter anymore. I was taking control finally. I wasn't going to let them drag me back into their toxic loop. I was done being their backup, done being invisible, And with each unanswered call, with each ignored message, the weight I'd been carrying for years lifted just a little more. Weeks went by, and I stuck to my decision. I didn't call, didn't text. I didn't answer their messages. The only contact I had was from Aunt Barbara, who, thankfully, understood. She had always been the quiet supporter in the family, the one who saw me for who I was, not just what I could do for them. She'd send me a text here and there, asking if I was doing okay, checking in, and I'd reply. But aside from that, it was silence. Mom and Dad eventually sold the house. They moved into a smaller place, a rental that was half the size of the one they'd had. I didn't feel sorry for them. It was their choice, their reality now. Jason's latest business venture had crumbled, just like the others, and he was still talking about his next big idea, as if he hadn't learned anything from the past. I didn't even bother responding when he called once or twice, mostly to complain about the lack of support he was getting. As the weeks turned into months, I found myself breathing easier. I started using the money I had been sending to them for years on myself. I invested in a few side projects, mostly tech stuff, since that was my thing. I even launched my own small consultancy, working with startups on the side. At first, it felt strange to focus on my own ambitions. But the more I did it, the more I realized how much I had been holding myself back for so long. For the first time in years, I didn't feel weighed down. I didn't feel like I had to be the responsible one, the one who made sure everyone else was taken care of. I felt lighter, like I could actually breathe. My mental health improved, and I started sleeping better. I wasn't constantly worrying about who needed me next, who was going to fall apart and make me pick up the pieces. Then one day, a Christmas card arrived from my parents. It was postmarked late, probably too late to even count as being on time. But that didn't matter. What mattered was what was inside. It was a simple card, a family photo. The same smiling faces, the same distant expressions. It said, "We miss you. Please come home for dinner. Let's try to make things right." I stared at it for a long time, trying to figure out what I was supposed to feel. There was a time when I might have jumped at the chance to go back, to play the part of the dutiful son, to pretend everything was fine just to make them happy. But not anymore. I set the card down, took a deep breath, and realized something. Family wasn't about obligation. It wasn't about who paid the bills or who kept everything running smoothly. It was about respect, understanding. And in all those years, I'd never felt respected or understood. I didn't respond, not then, not ever. I knew in that moment that my family hadn't changed. They hadn't learned anything, and I wasn't going back to a place where I was just a safety net, where my worth was measured by what I could provide. I'd moved on, and I was okay with that. Maybe they'd never understand, but that wasn't my problem anymore.